This story still haunts me to this day. This takes place around 10 years ago when I was like 8 or 9. I lived in a pretty shitty neighborhood in what was at the time a really rundown city. It wasn't good, but it wasn't bad at the same time, just a few bad apples in the tree. Anyways, enough background on the neighborhood, now on to the main story. My friends and I loved to play outside. It was the only thing we could do. No one in the neighborhood could afford any sort of electronics or any sort of fun machine to play with. We loved to just run through people's yards, cutting through houses, if they just so happened to leave their door open. Now, looking back on it, it is probably the dumbest thing kids our age could have been doing in a neighborhood like that. This story has nothing to do with running in people's houses. Just wanted to let you know how dumb of kids we were. Well, on one fateful day, we were playing hide and seek with 4 of us hiders and 1 of us a seeker. We thought it would have been a funny idea to go to the other side of the neighborhood so that the seeker could never find us and we'd win. We'd like to call that part of the neighborhood the rich part because they had 2-story houses over there and a forest with a creek in it. We were just doing our usual thing, cutting through people's yards and jumping fences, when we heard the loudest scream maybe 4, 5 houses down. After hopping off the fence that we had just jumped, we all stopped and looked around wondering where it came from. I noticed that one of our hiders weren't with us anymore. 3 of us left. "Where's Isaac?" I exclaimed. We heard the scream again. I pointed towards where the sound came from, and we all jumped back over the fence we just jumped from and ran towards the scream. When we thought we got to the spot where the screaming was coming from, there was nothing there but an empty plot of land and the forest. We all started to get scared. Did Isaac get lost in the forest? Did he get taken back there? Then we heard the scream again. It was definitely Isaac. I decided to be the man of all the other 8-year-olds and go into the forest to make sure Isaac was okay. As I started my way into the trees, I did one last look at my friends and saw how horrified their faces were. I knew at the moment that I was definitely the only one that could go down into the forest. Making my way in, I could feel all the heat in my body fading and some sort of dread starting to take over. As I walked further in, it started getting darker and harder to see. I was whisper yelling my friend's name. He responded in the most shaken up voice, "Down here! Be quiet!" I finally got to him and asked him what happened. He told me this story of how he got tired of running and decided to take a break on the curb to catch his breath, and that instead of being out in the open and risking the chance of being caught, he decided to go into the woods and hide. He said that after like 5 minutes after he sat down, he heard talking, nothing that he could make out. Just random nonsense. He looked around to see a man in a black hoodie hiding behind a tree on the other side of the creek staring at him. But the man took off before my friend could even get up to run away. And this is where he said he started screaming at the top of his lungs and hid somewhere else in the forest, which is where both of us are now hiding. And I kid you not, as soon as he told me this, we heard a twig snap. We both look up to see the man looking for us in some of the shrubbery on the forest floor. I couldn't make out any facial expressions or anything on his face, for a matter of fact. I could see he was holding some sort of blade. I couldn't tell if it was a stick or a machete. All I knew is that we needed to run. So when he turned his back, we got up and started running. We didn't care how loud we were. We just knew that we needed to run. We got out of the forest and told all of our friends to run as fast as they could down the street. We kept running until we got to the other side of the block, and we all turned around to see the street empty. No one. Not a single car. And from a distance, you could hear a roar, or like a very loud engine. Shortly after that initial roar, a silver 2000s Mustang with the darkest windows comes peeling around the corner faster than I've ever seen a car go, headed straight towards us. I've never had my body tighten up like it had at that very moment when I knew it was the same guy from the forest. I told all my friends to split up and run into people's yards to hide. So as we were all hiding and running through alleyways and jumping fences, you can still hear his engine. It was like he was targeting only me. I can't even tell you how far I ran. I got to the point where I didn't even think I was in my neighborhood. But still, I hear his engine coming up on me. So I ran more. I was exhausted. The sun finally started to set, and I could hear his engine fade. Almost like he had forgotten about me, or just had given up. I start making my way back home scared shitless, checking my back every so often to make sure I wasn't being followed. Once I made it home, I went right to bed to cry myself to sleep. And for months after that, that 2000 silver Mustang would follow us, stalking every corner that we played on. We'd see it at our school, at the grocery store, hell. It could have been a coincidence that our little minds are now perceiving things around us. But either way, I think he was stalking us. Nothing actually came of him following us. He never did what he did that first day. But it was still so scary seeing that car everywhere we went. I didn't know what to, or how to tell my mom. So I didn't. And still haven't. Funny enough, the seeker didn't know what happened until the day after when we were at school, and we told him. He still doesn't believe us and says it was to go inside and have him looking for us all night long.